This is a place called Charlestown, down in Cornwall, and it's where they filmed the TV series Poldark. Now, it's incredibly complex, ridiculously complex. We've got this gate here, dock gate or harbour gate, that seems to dominate the foreground along with the wall. Now, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't make for a great foreground. So I'm going to drop it down to lower than it appears in the actual photo, because otherwise, if we push it up where it is in the photo, it's going to be up here somewhere, and it's just going to be about that. Okay. So eyeline is probably just above that. I'm guessing it at the moment. It's through here. We're obviously quite low down. Okay. I wasn't stood in the water, but it might look like I was. There was another wall down here, but the eyeline is very low. In fact, in the photograph, it's probably through there. Well, that's what I'm going to move. By dropping this gate down, I'm moving my eyeline up above it a bit, about there. If you look carefully, there's all sorts of information and detail going on. There's a row of parasols around here in this area, and I'm really going to try to keep my drawing to a minimum. Start how you mean to go on. If you don't want clutter and a scene that's as complicated as the photograph, then keep your drawing to a minimum. So what I see is just the need for only the bare essentials. There'll be water here in front of this gate. Okay. These sort of abstract shapes of darks. Squint your eyes. If you squint your eyes looking at the photo, what you'll notice is there's darks at the back. There's a row of trees at the back. There's a darkish area in the mid, sort of sandwich somewhere in the middle, very horizontal dark. And this huge abstract dark shape that is the shadowed side of the wall, the inner wall. Now, I don't think that's a great mix of balance. So I'm going to be playing a lot of this down, a lot of this area down here with some suggestion of water. Now, I couldn't even tell you what these things are to the left. I think it's a vehicle, the end of a van or a mobile, one of these mobile fast food things. It's not important what that is. I will just make a sort of suggestion of something square there to represent it. As I say, those parasols seem to run through here, something like that. Above the parasols, it's anybody's guess what's going on. There's a vertical wall, that's quite clear. There's a vertical wall there. So it's a darkish mid-tone, I think, that shape there. So let me just clarify what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the gate played down a little bit. The gate actually comes up higher than I've just drawn it in. So I'm just making some adjustments. The gate comes up to about there. So I'll have to take it up a little bit. And then almost sat directly on that line of the top of the gate and the wall are those parasols. So that's more accurate to, a bit more accurate to what's actually in the photo. We did the wall, the suggestion of wall back here. And just picking up on some light verticals, some darker tone verticals in between. So there's a wall that we must indicate is sort of made up of small verticals. Now, the obvious thing is the cottages, okay? And they run directly across the wall up here. I'm not going to start counting the buildings for now. I can pick up on this individual pink building on the end if I want to. It's a shame it's there. It's a shame that that building there, that one there, isn't in the mix a bit further. I could move it, but we'll leave it like it is for the moment. So I'll make more and put more emphasis perhaps on this row of cottages here. Right, let me zoom in. Let me zoom in, and I'll need to refocus, so this might go a bit strange. Yeah, if you can see that, okay, that's just a sort of, you know, I see this area here, this wall area as a horizontal, mostly horizontal shape that goes from one side of my painting to the other. And so are the buildings. The buildings are another separate horizontal that go from left to right, right to left. Even the wall and the gate is a horizontal, but they are all different. This is a very broad, deep shape that goes horizontally across my painting. The area above it, immediately above it, is a very thin slither where there's a little bit of detail of, let me just draw those in a bit better. You know, there's a little bit of hints of these parasols here, in here, sort of thing like this. And then above that is this wall. Then above the wall are the cottages. Above the cottages, few trees, sky. Okay. So I'm going to zoom back out now and refocus. Let me just see if I can get that focus back for us there. Let's put my hand there a second. There we are. Just make sure that's the best focus I can get. Yeah, right. So let's get some paint going. Now, again, I want to steer us away from the tight. Okay. So best way to start a painting, if it allows, if the scene allows you to do so, is just get something up in the sky. It could be water if you like, it could be the brush with water in it, no paint. But I tend to just like to start things off here with a lot of water and a little bit of paint. The sky must be pretty pale, you know. I'm on a shallower angle working through this camera than I would normally be. I normally have a little bit more of an angle on my board, so you know it would be elevated a little bit with more of a slope on it, but I can still get the bead. I think you can see that. There's a bead accumulating where the wet meets the dry. Okay, and that's what the bead is. It's just paint water meeting a resist on the surface of the dry paper. So I said I'd put my trees into the bead. So you've got to be a little bit careful here. I'm going to just pick up the smaller round brush, because the bead contains a lot of moisture. You might just get your trees drifting right up into the sky, completely up into the sky. But if you don't put too much water in this, I'm going to mix up a green. Let's just mix up for the moment Viridian green and raw sienna. Okay, Viridian green, raw sienna. Now the important thing here is not the color mix, really. It's the strength, it's the dryness of the mix. So raw sienna. I've just picked up a little bit of cab yellow, but it doesn't matter. So as I say, it's the ratio of paint to water. If there's too much water in this mix, despite me taking some of the water off, my green will still drift up into the sky. But if I take the water out and really have mostly just paint rather than water in the mix, then those shapes that I make are going to stay put. They're not going to drift as much into the sky. So I don't know exactly what the trees do up there, but it's basically a line that's broken up with green colors. That's the way I see it. Okay. I don't want to start counting the trees. That's just not for the loose style watercolorist. Now, should the mix over here, because this is further away from us, this harbour just disappears up into the left-hand side. If I pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue, okay, same brush, I haven't cleaned it, certainly haven't picked up any more water. But if I were to drop a little bit of blue into this side, that'll give us curvature. That'll give us this sort of turn of angle. It'll push this area of the scene further away, okay? Because the green's now a bit colder. So the warmer greens are down here and the cooler greens turn away from us up there, something like that. Now, there's clouds in the sky, I know, but honestly, this is a very busy scene. You don't want to start making a very busy sky with lots of clouds in it and then pile on the busyness in the actual landmass itself. Right, okay, I'm going to stick with this smaller round brush for the moment because I'm going to stay out of the roofs, just the roofs, stay out of the roofs. And the reason why I'm staying out of the roofs is because I don't want to make contact with that green because it's still wet. But I can come through the buildings, the cottages. I'm picking up the weakest amount of alizarin crimson here. Into that, I'm very quick to pick up a small amount, equally small amount of raw sienna, just warming that up a little bit. Now, I'm cleaning the brush and I'm putting lots of water in this brush because I've put the color roughly where I want it. Now I can move it around. That pink building over here, you know, if I go into the roof, I only go into the lower edges. I avoid making contact with the green paint that's still wet, that's above them in the trees. So let's go. If we to look at some of the colors of those cottages, they are a sort of cream white, something like that. At this distance, you're not going to see the intensity of color. So they are generally speaking, they're a light color, a light, nondescript, neutralish color. It's hard to define whether those cottages are warm whites, cool whites. So the reason why I went warm down here is because I know that a warm light color is going to work nicely with a green because green is a coolish color. But just like the trees, you probably want to go a little bit bluer back here in this area that's going to be further trees, buildings and things like that. Now then, this is where you might have to get a little more deft with your brushwork, okay? A little more careful. We had the parasols, and I think because there's so much detail, potential detail down here, we've got to choose something that's going to give it interest. Now, the cottages will provide a certain amount of interest, but I think we should make the most of the parasols, albeit they're very small and seemingly nondescript. You think, well, how do you pick up on that? Well, they're such a different shape to everything else. I think it's worth trying to bring them out, okay? We'll leave the buildings for now, and because they're easy to tackle. All they need is a couple of windows and the odd line and perhaps a little bit of color in the roof. Job done there. But when it comes to the actual parasol area, what we must make sure we do is go darker here. So this will be so far the darkest area that I'm about to paint. And we'll cut around the parasols when we're putting the dark in. Now, if you take a long time going around those little parasols, carefully carving out the little parasols in negative, it's going to look pretty contrived, pretty tight. This sounds like a contradiction in itself. You've got to find the confidence to randomly go round things down here with a dark mix, and I'll give you all this mix in a moment. When the mix is in the brush, you need to be going round the parasols. What you don't want to do, this is my best advice, don't think of each parasol, okay? Think of 3 parasols glued together, you know, overlapping each other. Don't think parasol, go round it, parasol, go round it, parasol, go round it. en masse, when there's two or three overlapping each other, as there is, that'll be a more abstract shape. Let me just do it. While I'm talking, I'm allowing, of course, that paint that I just put on to dry out, because the dark, we don't want the dark that I'm about to apply drifting into the cottages. So I'll just speed dry it with my hairdryer as well here to make absolutely sure that doesn't happen. Right, I'm going to have two brushes to hand. I'm going to have the medium-sized round brush, and I'm going to have a small pointed brush, because that'll allow me a little bit of, you know, finesse, if you like, if I need it. But the main thing I'm thinking of here is how I make the shapes of the parasols. Don't think about the color of the parasols. We're painting around them at the moment. I'm mixing up here ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue. I have to move this palette out of the way because it will get in my way. And burnt sienna. Okay. And we could put a little bit of alizarin crimson in there, because I don't want that. Here's an example of where we started about the color wheels. I don't want this dark color to be too muddy looking, too warm. So I'm choosing three transparent colors: ultramarine blue, which is transparent; burnt sienna, if you've got a good quality burnt sienna, which will be transparent; and alizarin crimson, which is transparent. So I've got a clean dark that's not too warm. I can still warm it up, but it won't go muddy because they're transparent colors. And if I want to warm it up, I use a little bit more of the burnt sienna. Right. I'm going to go underneath the parasols to start off with here, like this, making sort of linear lines like this, something like that. Now I'm going to start carving out. If I go above this, sorry, the best thing I can do here is just take a broader mark with the brush like this. Look how different that is. This line underneath the parasols was coming off the point of the brush, making a very horizontal linear shape. Okay, when I get to above the parasols, I'm pressing that fully loaded brush in, so I've got a reservoir of paint here above the parasols that I can now decide to carve out the parasols. Very random. I'm not counting the parasols, but I will be careful in a moment to drop a bit of this dark down in the odd place. Let's say we drop the dark down between a couple of parasols about here, something like that. Okay. And the same a bit further along. Just notice that my dark is very flat, isn't it? It's one color. So I'll just put a little bit of burnt sienna in one area, perhaps around here. Very subtle. You might not even pick this up on the screen, but that's a little bit of burnt sienna into the wet dark mass. So back to painting over the tops again. Same three transparent colors like this. So I can just really match, if I can match what I was using just a moment ago. There's some lights hitting the wall also, so it's not just about the parasols that we're leaving. We're painting in the negative. There's a dark wall that seems to come into here that I've elongated a little bit, and things, lights, surfaces that are offering a broken, breaking the shapes up. Okay. So when we go back down here, I'm going to put a bit more water in, because this is just like the trees and the houses up here, it gets weaker. And same sort of thing. I'm just hit and miss delivery of this paint. There was that little square thing over there. Let's go around that for the moment. So this above here is the wall, isn't it? Above the just sitting in front of the cottages. So it's coming along. It maybe they've got too much going on above in the parasols, where the area of the parasols, sorry, Parasols will get smaller until they peter out completely almost. So something like this. So there, you know, you can hardly make out, if you look at what I've left out, okay, you can hardly make out any individual parasol shape. But what it's doing is just making an interesting playoff of tonal values. I think that goes up there, something like that. Now, I'm going to stick with this sort of shape making because now that all this is dry, I've got the same mix more or less as what I've just been using above the parasols here. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson. Because what I want to do now, in fact, it's a fair bit of greenery. The area I'm looking at now is here. Okay, I've gone along the top of I've gone through the wall at the back, which is how I've managed to cut out my parasols here. But now I'm going to come back this way and work in this area where there's cottages up there and other things, but it really is just a very abstract. It just picked up a little bit of cadmium yellow then to add into here because I can see some greens. So, just glancing up, and I think I'm painting what I think I'm seeing basically. I'll go over my trees. I think this looks better now than the trees that we put in, a moment ago. So no harm in that. We can go around the buildings again with this. If I create too much hard edge in these trees now, this time around, then I'll show you what I'll do in a moment. Let me just get across from one side of the painting to the other as freely and as rapidly as I can. Something like that. So if all that stuff up there is looking too busy or too hard of edge, sorry, that's what I meant, then I've cleaned my brush in the water and I've taken most of the water out, and I'll just pull from the dry sky here, land the brush in the dry sky, pull that brush across some areas that I think could do with softening. More softness will occur back here the further away we are from this. So the softer edges will be up here, further into the deeper into the scene. Your harder edges will be here where it's closer to us. So you can leave most of those hard edge up there. Okay. I think when you're painting complicated scenes like this in the loose style, you're sort of always thinking you're doing two jobs at once, sometimes three jobs at once. And see this area now, to me, I think that looks like a couple of cottages. There's not really a roof or a window to be seen, but it has the characteristic of a row of cottages. So let's break things up with a little bit of lifting out up there. And look how cold that wall looks now compared to the warm greens that are in the background. So I think it's worth, and I think we're just still wet enough, damp enough in areas, it's worth just dropping in a little bit of warmth to keep the cohesion. A little bit of warmth into that dark wall area, which was a bit of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and cadmium yellow. Obviously, the bias being towards the burnt sienna because the blue isn't warm. It's just there to stop it from looking like only burnt sienna. Right. Okay. I'm going to do some work on the wall here in the foreground. And what I'm questioning myself about here is, can I do this with this size brush, or do I need to go up a brush? Well, the answer is simple. If you're in any doubt, go up a size in brush. I'm just going to wet it out, but I will stay off certain areas of light. There's not much evidence of a light surface going across the top of the gate, but I think that's probably quite important to do. There's plenty of light on the concrete surfaces here on top of the walls, plenty of light around there. So burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, with probably a bias towards the burnt sienna because it's a warm, they're mostly warm darks down here. Now, I don't want to go as dark as it is in the photo. I just feel as though that's too much. I might need to go up a bit here. I'll need to go darker than where I've got it at the moment, but as I say, not so dark that it's not as dark as the photo will have us believe. It's more paint, same two colors, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Lots of water, lots of paint. Shadow across there, but we'll leave that till towards the end of the painting. So there's my sort of, there's what I've created, a flat light strip. I'm going to change the gate color to a much warmer color. So this is nearly 100% burnt sienna. It's obviously, you know, it's the effects of rust, seawater on steel, making this a lovely warm rusty sort of color. I'll have to do something slightly different over the top with a dry mix, because that's the only way I'm going to suggest. There's a bit of detail over the top of this gate in this area here, very horizontal, almost like a farm gate. You know, I always think it's good to liken things to other things that we're more familiar with. That will help you with the confidence to paint it. So to me, the top of this sluice gate here is like a farm gate effect. So I'm this is what I talked about earlier, about we're not making the right mixes for our lines that we make. And this is why I use a pickle jar lid. It keeps my paint away from the water. This will give me a broken line, not a solid ink-like line. So cross here like this. Maybe there's a little vertical mullion in the middle there, something like that, but it's mostly horizontal, which I'm going to leave something like that. I'll suggest some slight dark corners into some areas. And now we're back to this stuff over here. In fact, there's a lot of light hitting. I will stick with this little dry brush mix actually for a moment. There's a lot of light hitting this wall on the left-hand side here. I'm not copying the actual structure really. I'm just getting an approximation of it. There's the bottom. So you've got to get this right. If you look across the flat of the water, this will be a flat area because it's water. Okay, imagine a flat line going from one side to the other. If you bring this side of your wall down too far or not down far enough, that's going to look weird. Okay, so on a parallel off the bottom of your paper, your wall on this side really should come down to the same point as it comes down here. Okay, it turns away there, yes, but there has to be a point where you can tell your viewer this wall here, you know, is on the same sort of flat as this wall on the left. Otherwise, as I say, it'll look like one side of your harbour wall is up in the air a bit and the other one's down, whatever. It'll just look awkward. So a little bit more of this dry brushwork. Something like this. I'm just inferring, I'm making it appear to look right rather than copying what's in front of me. I'm making sure that it looks right rather than it looks like the photograph. That's much more important. Okay. So I have to get some color in here. And it's a nondescript color. It's more or less the same as this, what's over here on this side in the wall. Now that's flattening out, isn't it, this wall? So I'm gonna have to deal with that. So let's just get something in here first of all. Put a tiny bit of cad yellow. There's always, by putting a bit of cad yellow in this, because there's blue in it already, will give a certain amount of green. There's always green around these areas. So just get some yellow over here that will put the green in for us. That will deflatten it. Take the flatness out. Perhaps a little bit of raw sienna. There seems to be a little bit of sand just there. And what I'll do is, with that sand, I'll drag that into the water. Okay. In a moment, we'll be able to paint the water.